If you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? This is the iconic closing line of every episode of RuPaul's Drag Race over the last 15 years. This quote encapsulates the ethos of RuPaul Charles, and it's only a sliver of how he has shaped our culture for decades. Living in a time where trans people, drag queens, and their rights and freedoms are continually under attack, it's important to celebrate and raise up members of those communities. As a drag queen, Rue has been at the forefront of fights to expand rights of LGBTQ plus Americans from the 80s right up until today. He was one of the first openly gay television hosts in the 90s and introduced countless Americans to an identity that was mostly only talked about in hushed whispers at the time. RuPaul Charles has been an inspiration, mentor, and model for how to live your life for more than 30 years. Ru has transformed the way so many view themselves, including how I see myself. His influence is seen not only in the United States, where RuPaul's Drag Race has become a cultural phenomenon, especially since the outset of the pandemic, but you can see the impact of his influence throughout the world, with franchises in over a dozen other countries. RuPaul encourages the drag queens competing on his show to trust and believe in themselves. Although those sentiments can often seem cliche, his encouragement comes in the form of nurturing a genuine love for yourself. He helps to foster forgiveness for the queen's so-called faults, while teaching them to turn their weaknesses into strengths. One example of this transformation is Jinx Monsoon. She was a contestant 10 years ago who was an awkward outcast in the season. Rue encouraged her to embrace her weird, bring down her emotional walls, and be vulnerable with the audience. It worked. Jinx was not only crowned winner of the season, but was also an instant fan favorite. If RuPaul hadn't encouraged Jinx to let her awkwardness shine, we likely would never have been able to appreciate her humor and brilliance being hidden behind the walls she had built up. This attitude of encouragement is something that translates through the television screen as well. For me personally, RuPaul has taught me to trust myself more, through both his actions and his words. One moment from an episode that aired earlier this year stands out. He was speaking to Lux Noir London, a contestant on season 15, about a look Ru wore in the 80s, long before he was an international superstar. A look that Lux was paying homage to. He asked, "If you'd asked me if I'd be in this seat, hosting a television show back then, you know what my answer would have been?" Lux quickly responded with an emphatic yes, because that belief in yourself, even if it may seem delusional to some, is such a hallmark of RuPaul himself. From being a backup dancer in a music video in the 80s to hosting one of the most successful competition television shows today, RuPaul has been one of the most highly visible and influential members of the LGBTQ plus community for decades. He's led countless people, myself included, to look more favorably on themselves and extend some grace and trust to the person in the mirror. I'll close just as Ru does and ask, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? Can I get an amen?